Two Russian submarines are shadowing an American aircraft carrier in the Strait of Hormuz. The sonar operator leans forward, watching acoustic traces slide across his screen. Then he hears it, the unmistakable sound of torpedo tubes opening. And what happens in the next 17 minutes will determine whether restraint or aggression controls the most dangerous waterway on Earth. Most people think naval warfare is about missiles screaming through the sky and destroyers trading fire on the horizon. But the deadliest battles happen in complete silence, 300 feet below the surface, where a single wrong decision can sink $1 billion warship and change the balance of power in the Persian Gulf forever. It starts at 4:19 in the morning. The USS Gerald Ford is moving through Hormuz at steady speed, her flight deck darkened, escorted by two Arleigh Burke destroyers. Below the waterline, sonar operators sit in windowless rooms, watching screens that can hear farther than human eyes can see. Then the first contact appears on the display. Low, slow, and too disciplined to be commercial traffic. The operator reaches for his intercom, without hesitation. Combat, sonar. Possible submerged contact, bearing 078, range closing. In the Combat Information Center, the room goes quiet. Everyone knows what that means. The Strait of Hormuz is crowded on the surface with tankers, fishing boats, and patrol craft. But beneath that surface, there are no flags, no running lights, no radio calls. Just pressure, darkness, and the kind of sound that can kill you before you hear it coming. The watch officer steps behind the sonar station. His voice is controlled but urgent. Classify that contact. The acoustic computer pulls apart the signal like a forensic analyst examining evidence. Blade rate, machinery rhythm, depth estimate, movement pattern. It does not match any commercial vessel in the database. It does not behave like background noise. Then a second line appears on the screen. Farther forward, deeper, moving on a separate bearing. Two submerged contacts. The first is trailing the carrier group from behind. The second is positioned ahead like a shadow waiting in ambush. Together they form something no carrier commander ever wants to see. A closing box. The destroyer alerts the carrier through encrypted channels. Two possible hostile submarines, formation hold, anti-submarine warfare posture recommended. On the carrier bridge, the captain does not raise his voice. He looks out over the dark water, then down at the tactical display glowing beside him. The ship does not turn, it does not accelerate, it does not broadcast panic into the night. His response is pure Navy doctrine: maintain course, bring the screen out, notify air. That is the American answer, not fear, procedure. The escorting destroyers begin widening their positions by degrees. Nothing dramatic from the outside. A tanker captain 2 miles away would see only dark silhouettes shifting slowly against the horizon. But inside the formation, the geometry is changing. The carrier remains at the center. The escorts stretch outward. The underwater search pattern begins to form. Remember this detail because it becomes crucial later. The submarines are not simply following the American ships, they are shaping the encounter. Contact 1 uses the carrier's own movement and the acoustic noise of Hormuz to hide its approach. Contact 2 positions itself like a gate across the carrier's projected path. This is not random submarine activity, this is coordinated tactical maneuvering by crews who know exactly what they are doing. On the flight deck, the first MH-60R Seahawk helicopter is already being prepared for launch. Rotor blades unfold under red deck lights. Sensor operators climb into the cabin. Pilots run through pre-flight checks with short, clipped calls. The helicopter is not being launched to attack, not yet. It is being launched to listen, because in anti-submarine warfare, hearing comes before hitting. At 4:27, the Seahawk lifts from the carrier deck and banks low over the dark water. Inside, the sensor operator begins preparing the first sonobuoy pattern. These devices will drop into the sea, deploy listening arrays beneath the surface, and feed acoustic data back to the helicopter. Within minutes, the Seahawk is no longer just flying above the strait, it is building an invisible net of sensors across it. Then the situation escalates. The sonar operator on the destroyer freezes for half a second. A new sound cuts through the acoustic clutter. Short, sharp, mechanical. Not propeller noise, not hull flow, not a whale. He replays it once, then again. His voice tightens but stays controlled. Combat, sonar. Transient detected from contact 1. The watch officer turns immediately. What kind of transient? The operator looks at his screen, then at the bearing line pointing straight toward the carrier's starboard quarter. Possible torpedo tube activity. For the first time that morning, every person in the room understands the same thing at once. The Russian submarines are no longer just watching, they may be preparing to fire. Under the black water of Hormuz, the first move toward open combat may have already been made. And now the clock is ticking. The Seahawk drops its first sonobuoy at 4:28. The device falls into the water and disappears, then opens beneath the surface and begins listening. A second buoy follows 20 seconds later. Then a third. Each one adds another layer to the detection grid. The helicopter is not hunting blindly. It is methodically closing escape routes. On the destroyer, sonar continues tracking both contacts. Contact 1 remains behind the carrier, moving slowly but deliberately. Contact 2 holds position ahead of the formation, deeper and harder to classify, but clearly not commercial traffic. The tactical coordinator marks both submarines on the shared display and recommends the formation widen further. The carrier does not turn away from the threat. The escorts do. One destroyer slides east, increasing detection range. Another moves west, opening lanes of fire. At 4:31, the first active sonar pulse goes out. It is short, controlled, deliberate. A hard metallic ping moves through the water, strikes temperature layers, bends through the deep, and returns in fragments. The operator watches the return pattern sharpen, blur, and sharpen again. Possible return, bearing 082, contact 1 reacts. Not much, just enough. It changes depth by 30 feet. Here is what that means. A submarine that ignores sonar may be hiding innocently. A submarine that reacts to sonar has just admitted it heard you and is taking evasive action. Contact 1 is no longer a ghost on the screen. It is a confirmed hostile submarine close enough to threaten the carrier and now actively maneuvering to avoid detection. The destroyer does not flood the zone with continuous sonar pinging. That would reveal as much as it detects. Instead, they use exactly what they need. One pulse to force movement, one movement to confirm hostile intent. Above the water, the Seahawk drops another buoy and banks right, extending the search pattern. The acoustic picture becomes clearer with every passing minute. At 4:35, Contact 2 makes its move. The submarine that had been waiting ahead of the formation begins accelerating and cutting across the carrier's projected path. Not fast, not recklessly, just enough to create pressure from a second angle. The tactical display now shows what everyone feared. Contact 1 behind and starboard. Contact 2 ahead and moving laterally. If this is a challenge to American control of these waters, it is carefully orchestrated. But the carrier does not react to the pressure. The screen does. The Western destroyer increases speed by 3 knots and angles toward Contact 2's predicted intercept line. The Eastern destroyer holds Contact 1 inside the sonobuoy field. The Seahawk changes course and moves between both tracks, forcing the submarines to account for a moving airborne sensor overhead. A second helicopter is brought to launch readiness. No announcement, no drama, just another layer of defense. At 4:38, the sonar operator hears the sound that changes everything. Another transient from Contact 1's bearing, shorter than the first, cleaner, more definitive. The room tightens as he makes the call. Transient detected. Same contact. Possible outer door movement. Torpedo tube activity is not a launch. It is not proof of immediate attack, but it is no longer passive shadowing. Someone aboard that Russian submarine is preparing weapons for potential use. The destroyer sends a coded report to the carrier, possible weapon preparation. No launch confirmed. On the carrier bridge, the captain gives a single quiet order. Bring torpedo defense to ready. Below the waterline, countermeasure teams monitor systems designed for the nightmare scenario. A torpedo already in the water, running cold and fast toward the carrier's hull. Decoys are checked. Launch circuits verified. Evasion courses calculated but not executed, because the wrong maneuver too early could tell the submarine exactly where the carrier plans to go. High above the Persian Gulf, a P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft receives new tasking and turns toward Hormuz. It is not close yet, but its arrival changes the tactical equation completely. A submarine can evade one destroyer, it can outlast one helicopter, but a coordinated search from surface ships, airborne sonar, and long-range patrol aircraft is something entirely different. It is a net that does not need to move fast, it just needs to close correctly. Contact 2 begins to slow as if sensing the trap forming around it, but Contact 1 does not. The first submarine continues edging inward, using noise from a passing oil tanker to mask its movement. For 12 seconds, the track weakens and the operator almost loses it in the acoustic clutter. Then the sonobuoy field catches the sound signature again. Bearing steady, range decreasing, the Russian boat is still coming. At 4:40, the acoustic display changes in a way that makes everyone's blood run cold. A small, fast-moving signature separates from the area of contact 1. It is not moving like a submarine. It is moving too fast, too direct, too much like something designed to kill. The sonar operator does not wait for perfect certainty. In undersea combat, perfect certainty can arrive after impact. He keys the circuit with controlled urgency. Combat, sonar, possible weapon in the water. For 1 second, every person in the Combat Information Center stops breathing. Then the entire strike group moves as one organism. This is the moment when 17 years of training, billions of dollars in technology, and decades of naval doctrine either work perfectly or fail catastrophically. There is no middle ground when a torpedo is running toward your ship. The destroyer launches the first acoustic decoy before the weapon track fully stabilizes, then a second. The devices drop into the black water and begin screaming electronically into the sea, throwing out false signatures louder and more attractive than the carrier's real acoustic fingerprint. To a torpedo's seeker head, sound is everything. Propeller rhythm, machinery tone, pressure patterns. The decoy's job is simple but critical. Lie louder than the ship you are trying to protect. On the carrier bridge, the captain receives the report through his headset. Possible torpedo in the water. Countermeasures deployed. Carrier recommended evasive turn. He does not look surprised. He has trained for this moment his entire career. His response is immediate and calm. Execute planned maneuver. Minimal rudder. Keep flight deck stable. The helmsman answers without hesitation. Minimal rudder A. The massive carrier begins to turn, not sharply like a speedboat, not desperately like a ship in panic. A vessel that displaces 100,000 tons does not dodge. It survives by planning movement before the threat reaches the hull. The carrier's bow shifts by degrees, her wake bends slowly behind her. To anyone watching from a merchant ship nearby, the turn looks almost routine. Inside the strike group, it is anything but routine. This is controlled chaos. The Eastern destroyer moves to widen the defensive screen. The Western destroyer increases speed and angles toward Contact 2's projected path. The Seahawk banks hard above the water. Its crew monitoring the sonobuoy feeds as the acoustic picture fractures into layers of real sound, false sound, and hostile movement. Then something extraordinary happens. The suspected weapon turns not toward the carrier, toward the decoy. The sonar operator watches the track line bend away from the carrier's projected course. His voice remains controlled, but everyone can hear the relief underneath it. Possible weapon is tracking countermeasure. The room does not celebrate, not yet. A torpedo can reacquire its original target. If the decoy fails, a submarine can fire again. In anti-submarine warfare, surviving the first shot does not end the engagement. It starts the real fight. The Seahawk drops 2 more sonobuoys ahead of Contact 1's position. The submarine's track sharpens again on the tactical display. It is no longer just trailing the American formation. It has maneuvered into the edge of the search box and now finds itself being watched from 3 directions simultaneously. Destroyer sonar from the surface, sonobuoys from above, carrier group sensors from behind. The hunter is rapidly becoming the hunted. Contact 2 tries to exploit the chaos by cutting across the carrier's path at higher speed. It is not heading directly for the carrier, but it is trying to force an impossible decision. If the Americans focus entirely on the possible torpedo attack from behind, Contact 2 might slip through the forward screen undetected. If they split their attention too much, the carrier's defensive geometry falls apart. This is classic Russian submarine tactics. Pressure from behind, movement ahead, confusion in the middle. But the US Navy has spent decades training for exactly this kind of confusion. The Western destroyer does not abandon its post to chase the torpedo. It holds Contact 2. The Eastern destroyer does not lose focus on Contact 1. The Seahawk does not fly blindly between threats. Each unit maintains its specific assignment, because a carrier strike group is not one ship reacting emotionally to danger. It is a system designed to function under the worst possible pressure. At 4:45, the P-8 Poseidon enters the outer edge of the engagement zone, flying too high to be seen from the submarines below. Its sensors reach down into the water through data links and tactical coordination with the ships. The aircraft's mission commander studies the developing tracks and immediately recognizes the pattern. Contact 1 has revealed too much of itself through aggressive maneuvering, speed changes, and weapon preparation. Contact 2 is still quieter and deeper, but now it is moving in response to American pressure, and that responsive movement gives it shape on the sensors. The Poseidon releases a new sonobuoy pattern ahead of Contact 2's likely escape route. Small dark shapes fall one after another into the sea. An acoustic gate closes underwater. Now both Russian submarines find themselves operating inside an invisible cage of American sensors, with patrol aircraft overhead and destroyers closing from multiple angles. At 4:47, the suspected torpedo reaches the decoy field. The acoustic display blooms with electronic noise as the weapon circles, wavers, and begins tracking the false signature instead of the carrier. The operator confirms what everyone hoped to hear. Possible weapon no longer tracking carrier, threat reduced. But there is still no celebration in the Combat Information Center. Only more orders. Hold defensive posture, maintain tracking on both contacts, prepare for possible second launch. The carrier finishes its controlled evasive turn and steadies on the new heading. Damage control teams remain ready throughout the ship. Medical teams stay on standby. Flight deck crews keep clear of exposed areas without stopping essential operations. Every compartment understands the same fundamental truth. The ship is safe only until the next sound appears on sonar. At 4:49, the Seahawk descends to lower altitude and positions itself directly over Contact, one's projected location. It does not drop a torpedo. It does not need to. The helicopter's weapons bay doors and aggressive sensor posture send a message that travels clearly through 300 feet of seawater. The submarine below cannot see the aircraft directly, but it can hear the rotor rhythm. It can hear the sonobuoys splashing. It can hear the destroyer's screws adjusting position. The message is unmistakable. You are tracked, you are targeted, you do not control this water. The destroyer sends one more active sonar pulse into the depths. One hard, clean ping. The return comes back stronger than ever before. Contact 1 is there. No longer a shadow or a rumor. A real submarine with real weapons, close enough to have threatened an American aircraft carrier. And now close enough to be destroyed if it makes one more aggressive move. But something changes in that moment. Contact 1 suddenly begins to turn away, not toward the carrier, away from it. The bearing line drifts outward as the range starts to open. The submarine descends and reduces speed, trying to leave the engagement area without creating a loud acoustic signature. It is not a retreat in any theatrical sense. No emergency surfacing, no radio surrender, no visible admission of defeat. However, undersea warfare is not judged by theater. It is judged by position, course, speed, and depth. And all of those factors have changed in America's favor. The Russian submarine is leaving the attack geometry, opening range from the carrier, and abandoning whatever mission brought it so close to American warships in the first place. At 4:51, Contact 2 follows the same pattern. The forward submarine suddenly increases speed, but not toward the carrier. Away from it. The Poseidon sonobuoy gate captures every detail as Contact 2 runs straight into the acoustic trap at higher speed. The faster it moves, the more noise it makes. The more noise it makes, the easier it becomes to track and classify. Both Russian submarines came into the Strait of Hormuz hidden and dangerous. They are leaving cataloged and identified. This may be the most significant outcome of the entire encounter. Modern naval intelligence depends on acoustic signatures. How a submarine sounds when it accelerates, how it behaves when it turns, what noise it makes when it deploys decoys or changes depth. The Russian boats revealed all of that information during 17 minutes of tactical maneuvering. Every sound they made was recorded, time-stamped, and immediately transmitted to intelligence analysts who will study those signatures for years. By 4:53, both contacts are opening range and moving toward deeper water. The immediate threat to the carrier is over, but the defensive posture remains in place. The destroyers hold their widened screen. The Seahawk continues circling overhead. The Poseidon maintains its high-altitude watch, because the US Navy does not assume a threat has ended just because the sonar display looks cleaner. At 5:07, both submarine contacts are confirmed outbound. Contact 2 is already in deep water beyond the main shipping lanes. Contact 1 follows slower, still trying to look controlled, still attempting to preserve some illusion that it left by choice rather than pressure. But the tactical picture tells the truth that matters. The carrier was not forced off course, the defensive screen held, no weapon reached its target, no American ship had to fire first. The engagement ends the same way it began, in silence. The Russian submarines challenged American control of the Strait of Hormuz without declaring their presence. The US Navy answered that challenge without announcing victory. Both sides understood the stakes, both sides demonstrated capability, but only one side maintained control of the situation from beginning to end. Here's what most people never understand about modern naval warfare. The deadliest weapons are not always the ones that explode. Sometimes they are patience, discipline, and the ability to make your opponent reveal more than they intended. The Russian submarines came into Hormuz expecting to test American responses under pressure. Instead, they gave away acoustic signatures, tactical procedures, and operational capabilities that intelligence analysts will use to track their movements for decades. The carrier strike group continues its transit through the Strait. Same formation, same speed, same steady movement through one of the most dangerous maritime choke points on Earth. That continuity is the real victory. Not the sonar tracks or the defensive maneuvers or the torpedo that missed its target. The simple fact that an American aircraft carrier maintained its scheduled transit despite being challenged by two advanced Russian submarines operating in coordinated attack positions. By sunrise, the Strait of Hormuz looks peaceful again. Merchant traffic continues east and west. Oil tankers move through designated shipping lanes. The sea surface gives no indication that 17 minutes earlier, the world came close to an underwater firefight that could have changed the balance of power in the Persian Gulf forever. But every watch team aboard those American ships knows exactly how close that morning came to something far more dangerous. So here's the question that matters. When two Russian submarines shadow your carrier through the world's most strategic waterway, load torpedo tubes, and position themselves for a coordinated attack, do you fire first and ask questions later? Or do you demonstrate such overwhelming defensive capability that they choose to leave on their own? Because in the Strait of Hormuz at 4:19 in the morning, the US Navy proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one you never have to use. And the enemy you defeat without firing may stay defeated longer than the one you sink.